Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Avodah Zarah daf Vav. Avodah Zarah 6. Today's daf is dedicated for a shmir for the Chayalim. That's all for the Shvuyim and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael. This Eis Tzara daf yomi is continuing our discussion on Ham Abay's 6 lines from the bottom from the statement of the Amar Rabbi Elazar. What are we discussing in the Gemara? We're discussing the Gemara, the Mishnah had said that you're not allowed to do business with an idolater 3 days before their 3 days before the day of their holiday. So in this context, the Gemara says, why 3 days? Why not 1 day? We know that when it comes to our own holidays, the concern is the day that you buy the animal, you're going to slaughter it. The Gemara says, well, no, 3 days is for a sacrificial offering. So the Gemara says, well, then it should be 2 weeks or a month, like we learned from Pesach. And the Gemara says, no, that we have more blemishes, so therefore we need a month or 2 weeks, but they have less blemishes, so they only need 3 days. And how do we know this? So now we'll take it up 6 lines from the bottom on Ham Abayis. The Amar Rabbi Elazar, Menayin, Mechusar Ever, the Asur of Noach, that Ben Noahide, who wants to bring an offering, he's disqualified, not with all the blemishes that we have, like the cataracts of the eye, but only if it's missing a limb. And how do we know that? Boker Tov, Jeff, or 4 lines from the bottom on Ham Abayis, that it says that Noah, when he brought into the ark, he brought all from all the animals, the non-kosher ones, 2 animals, and it says Mikol Achai, and Amar Torah bring animals that have their limbs intact. And he was bringing the animals so he could bring korbanos afterwards. So they need to have limbs intact. Even though these were the non-kosher animals, we darshan from here to the kosher animals. The Gemara says, wait, from the words, well, that teaches us that Noach is not allowed to wasn't allowed to take an animal that was a treifa. A treifa, generally speaking, is a living creature that has, even though it's alive at this current second, it has a mortal wound, so it's soon to die. So therefore, maybe that's what it says, that you can't take it, that Noach couldn't take a treifa onto the ark. Not that it can't, the animal couldn't be missing a limb. Gemara says no. Treifa milach yod zer nafka. So we say, I'm balamite treifa. Well, no, treifa milach yod zer nafka. We learn out treifa from the fact that it says l'chayos zera. It says in the pasuk that l'chayos zera panei kol. So that means they have to be able to produce children, and a treifa can't produce children. So yeah, but that's a dispute in itself. On the Amar, we have this dispute in the Gemara in Chulin Dafnun Zayin Amabeis and Elu Treifos. There's a position there, the treifa and Yoled, that's fine. So then we learn out from there l'chayos zera that you can't take a treifa onto that. No, I couldn't take a treifa onto the ark. Elamandam are treifa Yoledes, but according to the Shita that says the treifa is capable of giving birth. Ma'ikol Neymar, what is, if that's the case, l'chayos zera teaches us to exclude a treifa. So again, let's just say this again. Now, we had said, how do we know that an animal, that a Ben Noach can't bring an animal that's missing a limb? Because it says in the pasuk, Mikol Achai. So Gemara says, no, but don't we need that to exclude a treifa? No, a treifa is excluded from l'chayos zera. Gemara says that's only according to the position who says that a treifa has to be able to produce children. But according to the one who says that a treifa, even though it's a treifa, can produce children, then if that's the case, we don't learn out from l'chayos zera, so we learn out from Chaim Shabbat. So the Gemara says, no, Amar Kra, the pasuk is going to tell us from Itcha. And no, how do we know that it's not a treifa? It's because Itcha, b'domin l'cha, that Noach was supposed to bring an animal in the ark that was similar to it. So just like he wasn't a treifa, he couldn't bring a treifa. The Gemara says, well, Dama Noach gufei treifa, but maybe Noach himself was a treifa. Even though Noach was many years afterwards, maybe he didn't realize that at the time. So the Gemara says, no, we know he wasn't a treifa because Tamim, it says he was Tamim, and Tamim is not a treifa. Tamim means pure. Maybe it means he was a good guy. So the Gemara says, no, it's tzaddik sivve. It already calls him righteous. But maybe he was both, Tamim and tzaddik. No, don't say that Noach was a treifa. These Noach treifa. If you want to think Noach was a treifa, Bring bring animals onto the ark like you, kavasach ayol shleimim lo tayo. Meaning to say, you think to say that God is telling him, bring animals like you into the ark, bring animals like meaning to say, only bring animals like you into the ark, but if the animal was a kavasach ayol shleimim lo tayo, meaning to say, trephos like you should bring to the ark, but don't bring shlamim into the ark, that doesn't make sense. So it must be that Noach himself was not a treifa. It's not logical to assume that. Now that we learn out from the fact that it says yitach, that the animals were supposed to be like Noach, who wasn't a treifa. Well, if that's the case, l'chayo zera. So what do we learn out from the fact that it says l'chayo zera? What do we use for that pasuk to teach us? And Gemara says, no, we need both. Yitach, if we just had yitach, havamina, but Sapta Ba'alma might have said that they're only there on the ark to be companionship for Noah, even though Noah had to work very hard to take care of them, but they were just like his pets. Mafilu Zakim, Mafilu Saris, even if they were old animals or neutered, that they couldn't produce children. So therefore, Kosav Rahman Zera, the Torah says Zera to tell us that they need to be capable of producing children, the animals that Noah brought into the ark. Okay, so now the Gemara asks the question, when it says in our Mishnah 3 days before the holiday, you're not allowed to do business with the idolater, the Gemara asks a fundamental question. And when it says 3 days, is that 3 days with the holiday, including the holiday, so it's really 4 days, or does it mean 3 days without the holiday, so it's just 3 days? So the Gemara says, let's try and bring a proof from the Brayso. Tashma Rabbi Shmuel Omer Shlosha of name was Shlosha Achrei and Aser. Rabbi Shmuel says the 3 days before and 3 days or afterwards are prohibited. Now he's Sakadai Tachin V'Day, and if you want to say it's them with their holiday, Rabbi Shmuel Yom Medan Chashavu Meikar V'Chashavu B'Sof. So if that's the case, it doesn't make sense. If he says it's 3 days with their holiday and 3 days after the holiday, you can't do that, because if you're counting it from the beginning, you can't double count. So it would be 3 days before and 2 days afterwards if you're counting the holiday itself. Not 3 days before and 3 days afterwards. So it must be he's not counting the holiday itself. So the Gemara says, no, I've done a shlosh of name. No, it could be it's just stylistic. Because it says 3 before, it says 3 afterwards, but really only means 2 afterwards. Kashma, another tempt Amarav Taklifi Baravdimi Amar Shmuel Yom Echad L'Divrei Rabbi Shmuel Lom Aser. There was a holiday that they used to observe at those days, which was Sunday, and so if that's the case, then it's always prohibited, because they observed every holiday as Sunday. So therefore, every Sunday is a holiday. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shmuel, it's always prohibited, because there's 3 days before and 3 days afterward, and the day itself. So therefore, and if you want to say it includes the holiday, then it must be that it does that. If you want to say 3 days includes the holiday itself, then it's not the case that everything is always prohibited, because then Wednesday and Thursday are not included in the prohibition of the prohibited days, because you only have Sunday, then Saturday and Friday, so Thursday is permitted, and you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so Wednesday is permitted. So it must be that you don't include the day of the holiday as part of the 3 days. It's not including the day of the holiday. So the Gemara says, "Well, different Shmuel." Gemara says, "I'll leave it to Rabbi Shmuel welcoming on the below them." When according to Rabbi Shmuel, when our Mishnah says Shlosh Yom Lefnei Day, and it means 3 days, not counting the day of the holiday itself, for sure, according to Rabbi Shmuel. But according to Rabbana, who argued with Rabbi Shmuel, what will be the case? So Baruch Atah Adonai Mocham Shakol Yedivah. Meaning to say, according to the Rabbanan, who don't say 3 days before and 3 days afterwards, which is what Rabbi Shmuel says. So if that's the case, according to Rabbanan, do they include the 3 days in the festival, in the holiday itself in the festival? The Gemara says, Tashma. We'll learn it out from Brayso later on. What does the Brayso say? The Brayso says, excuse me, not a Brayso, a Mishnah later on. The Mishnah says, the Eloin Idei and Shalom de Kochav, and these are the holidays of the idolaters. Kalanda, Satrunia, Kartasim, Ramarav Chanin Barava, Kalanda is Chas Yamim Akart Kufa. Kalanda was an 8-day holiday that happened right after the winter solstice. Okay, so an 8-day holiday is for the idolaters to mark in the middle of the winter. And Satronia is Shmona Yamim Lufnei Kufa. And that's an 8-day holiday before the solstice. The Simonech Achor V'Kedem. Okay, and that's the way you remember it. Achor V'Kedem Tzoratani. The Achor V'Kedem Tzoratani. So the Isakadaita Chain Lidei, and if you want to say, so this is a question on Rav Chanin Barava, because it says that the Kohen is 8 days after the Tekufa. So if you want to say that it's including it and the holiday, it should be 10 days. Asara Avu, not 3, 10 days. Asara Avu. So the Gemara says, Tana Kula Kohanacha Yom Chashavai. No, the Tana is counting all of the holiday as 1 day. So therefore it's not a proof. So the Gemara says, Amravashi Tashma. No, this is the proof. With Nay Angel of the Khavim Shloshi Yamim. And you're not allowed to do business with them 3 days before their holiday. And if you want to say that it includes Hain V'idayan, if you want to say that it includes this includes the day of the holiday itself. It should have said for the holidays of the idolaters are for 3 days you're not allowed to do business. And that would imply that when you came to the day of the holidays, you can't do business with them for 3 days. From the fact that it says Lifnei Edayim, that clearly implies that it's 3 days plus their holiday. And if you want to say it says before their holidays, it's to exclude the position. Rabbi Shmuel says after their holidays. Listening, Gimel Yamim. It could have formulated like that. The holidays and the festivals are prohibited 3 days before. So we say it's 3 days, not including the day of the holiday itself. So okay, fine. So now the Gemara asks the question: why is it prohibited to do business with the idolaters? Rashi on the first stop says the reason is because they're going to come and admit to their gods or give praise to their gods. But we'll see from our Gemara that Rashi just adopted one of the answers that are listed in the Gemara. What's the reason why you're not allowed to go and give praise why you're not allowed to do business with them? Is it because they're going to give praise to their God because they think that they're doing so well? They're saying, "Oh, I've done great, and I'm very religious idolater, so I'm going to go and give praise to my idol because I had a good stock deal." Or maybe it's because Lifnei Iver, that you're going to sell him an animal and he's going to go worship to their idolatry. And the idolaters are commanded about this because this is one of the 7 Noai laws that are listed in Arba Mitzvos in Sanhedrin. So okay, so this is the question. Once we're going to get into discussion of Lifnei Iver, there's a lot of interesting discussion about Lifnei Iver. It's a prohibition of inciting somebody to do a law or enabling somebody else to violate the law. So the fundamental question is this just its own prohibition, or is it only a prohibition that's part of the sin itself? So a couple of ways in which to understand the distinction is, let's say you do this, but the person doesn't sin. Let's say you give the guy a piece of pork, a cheeseburger, but he doesn't eat it. So are you in violation of a sin? Did you violate the prohibition of Lifnei Iver, or you only violate it if he sinned? Another way to understand it is we know that there are certain fundamental commandments and you're supposed to give up your life rather than violate them, like, for example, murder. So if you give the person the gun to shoot, so to kill somebody else, you violate Lifnei Iver, right? You gave a loaded gun to a drunk man and told him, and showed him what to do. But is that action of giving him the gun, is that, do you have to give up your life rather before you give him the gun? Or is the only giving up your life before shooting the gun? Meaning to say, what's the nature of the prohibition of lifnei iver? So an agent for sin is where the person is acting as your emissary. Let's say your attorney or something. But here, you're enabling the person to sin. So it's its own sin that you've enabled him to sin. That's lifnei iver. He's not doing it on your behalf. You just enabled him to sin. Like you didn't ask him to shoot the person. You gave him the loaded gun. You enabled it. We'll see more from the Gemara's examples here. So the Gemara says, what's the distinction in this case? The distinction in this case is let's say the idolater has his own animal. If you say that the problem is that he's going to go and give thanks to his God, well, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're always happy to get more. So he's going to go and give praise to his God. But if you say, well, now you've made it possible for him to do a mitzvah, you didn't make anything possible. He already had it on his own. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. You're saying if you didn't enable it by your action, he would have been able to do it on his own. You're saying that that's not a violation of lifnei iver. Or Vatanya, Amar Rabbi Nassan, didn't Rabbi Nassan say on top of Vavam Abayz, Minayin Shal Yoshid Adam Koshal Yayin Nazir, the Aver Minachai of Noach? How do we know that you're not allowed to hand over a cup of wine to a Nazarite? A Nazarite can't drink wine, or a limb of a living animal to Bnei Noach. So you're not allowed to pass it over to them because it's a violation of Lifnei Iver. Here in this case, even if you wouldn't give it to him, he would have taken it himself. So even in the case where he would take it himself, you're still in violation. The Gemara says, no, that case is different. Now there, the Nazarite or the Noahide was on the opposite side of the river, so he couldn't get it on his own. But if he could have gotten on his own, you're not in violation of Lifnei Iver Osite Mechshol. And Dekanami, the Kataning Lo Yoshi, don't pass it over. So basically, the simplest reading of this Gemara is that if the person could have done it on his own, you're not in violation of Lifnei Iver. Sometimes people ask about. Do you have a question? Okay, so no. And sometimes people ask about. They work for a boss who's not religious, and the boss says, "Go pick up the non-kosher food for me from the store." Now you're bringing him the non-kosher food, but is that a violation of Lifnei Iver? No, he could have done it himself. You're just making his life slightly easier. So then it's okay. Or the question that was asked is, can you give somebody a piece of food that you know they're not going to make a bracha on? You're going to give them bread, and they're not going to make a bracha. So for many years, the psak was that you're not allowed to do that. But then Rav Shlomo Zalman Aruch said, no, it's a greater violation of Lifnei Iver to not give him the food, because they'll say, oh, the religious Jews don't want to give me food, and the person is going to come to, you're going to Lifnei Iver to cause them to hate you, to hate Torah. Now the Gemara asks the question, okay, let's say you did the business with the idolater. You're allowed to get benefit from that. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nasan and Nasan also, that once you've done the business, you can't, it becomes prohibited to hana. You can't have benefit. He says you can. Basically, Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, what are you talking about? And it says in the Brisa that if you do business with her or their idolaters, it's prohibited. My love of Ne'edeim. Doesn't it mean that if you do business before their holidays, it's prohibited to have benefit? The Gemara says no. Edei and Davka Rish Lakish would say that statement from the Brisa means if you do business with them on their holiday, that's where it's prohibited to have benefit from. His favorite Shalkas Rabbi Yochanan, Edain Shal of the Kochavim, Nasan and Nasan. Oh, excuse me, a different version of this is Ikadami. Alternatively, His favorite Shalkas Rabbi Yochanan, Shalkas has Rabbi Yochanan. Edain Shal of the Kochavim, Nasan and Nasan. Also, Edain Elfei Edain Lo, that only on their holidays it's prohibited to have benefit. But if you did the business before their holiday, it wouldn't be prohibited. So the Gemara says, no, Tana Idi V'Idi Edain Karilei. No, it's possible that even before even before their holiday is called very day in. The Tanya Kavasa de Rish Lakish, we have a price like Rish Lakish that says if you did business, you can get benefit. When we say I do business with them, that's only like something that would last. For example, let's say some cereal. But let's say you have like an avocado, it's not going to last 3 days. Or a fresh piece of chicken, it's not going to last 3 days. Well, then you're allowed to do business with them 3 days before because it's not going to be there on their holiday. And even if it's something that will last, not something not some that if you engage in business, even though you weren't supposed to, it's permitted to have benefit. So the price is like Rish Lakish. Tani Rav Zvid b'Rabbi Rabbi Oshaya Davar Shem Miskaya Mochen Lam Avolen Lochem Lam. If it's something that's not going to last, you can sell to them because it's not going to be there by the holiday, but you can't buy from them because then they'll have your money and they'll be using it on their holiday. Says the Gemara, Hahu Mina Deshadrei Dinara Kizarna Odbe Yehuda Nesia. So there was a mint who sent a coin of the Caesar to Rabbi Yehuda Nesia B'Yom Edo on the day of his holiday. He wanted to give a nice present. So, and it's to his benefit that Rabbi Yehuda Nesia, the head of the Jews, would accept the coin. And the Yosef Rish Lakish Kamei, Rish Lakish was there. Amar Hechei Avid. Rish Lakish says, "What should I do? Ashkelei, if I'm going to accept the money." Rabbi Yehuda Nesia says, "Azul Modeh." He'll go and give gratitude to his God. If I won't take it, it'll be hatred. Amar Rish Lakish. So I'll tell you what to do. You should take it, toll. And throw it out into the pit while you're still there, so he doesn't think you're benefiting from it. So then Rabbi Yosef says, "Amar Kolshkin that way." But what do you think? That's going to cause even more hatred if he sees me throwing away his coin. So the Gemara says no. The Rish Lakish's answer is Kol Achar Yad Yehuda Kam here. I was saying doing it in a manner that he doesn't think that you threw it intentionally. It'll make it look like you've lost. And so therefore, he's going to be upset that you didn't actually benefit, but he won't blame you. I don't know. Yeah, before you try that one on your own, you have to ask a shayla. So it says, Rashil and to lend them it's prohibited 3 days before. To lend them or to borrow from them. Bishlam Rashil, and I understand why you can't lend them to come to Radachul. Now he's going to go and give gratitude to his idol, Avo Shulman, to borrow from them. Beauty come in Milu, you're diminishing them. Amar Abaye, no. No, it's a decree that if you lend them, that if you borrow from them, you're going to come to lend them. Rabbi Amar Kul Mishum da Azul Modu. No. Rabbi says no. If you borrow from them, then he's going to go and give gratitude. So, and we'll see why in a couple of minutes. So the next case, to lend them money or to borrow from them. I understand what the problem with lending them is Mishlam Kamaravikul. You're helping him. But to borrow from them, so Abai says, it's a decree. If you borrow, you might come to lend. And Rabbi says, we'll go and give gratitude to God. Next case, to pay them or to collect money from them. I understand the problem with paying them is Mishum to come Meravichlu, because he's making money. He's going to go praise God. His idol, man, like money from them, mutim mayathu. So Abai gives the same answer. And then Rava says, Kul Mishum da Azul model. So why do we need all three cases? It's basically the same question and answer. Sricha. We need all three. The Itana, what says, if we just said, I do business, Mishum to come Meravichlu, because then he's making money and he's going to go praise his idol. In the case of borrowing, the miuti come in ma'alahu. If you just say you're not allowed to do business with them because he makes money, but if you borrow from them, come in ma'alahu, then he's diminishing his case, shopper dummy. So he has less money. I might thought that you're allowed to do it. If you just said the case of borrowing, because borrowing is something that's he's proud that he's lending his animal to the Jew. He'll go give gratitude of a Lobos man, but to borrow money from them, he's going to think that's going to cause him a lot of distress because he's not it's not like you're using his item, you're just using his cash. And Amar, and I'll say, Tuv lo hadri zuzi. I'm never going to see my money again. Vitani lovos, man. Then you say just a borrow mishum to come bal korchim in front of. He says, well, you know what? Even if it doesn't take me back, I'll go and collect it. Ashta mia azol moda, and then I'll go and praise God. I'll be pari man. But to actually collect money from them, the sulo hadri zuze, that he's never going to get his money back. I might have thought Emat Sarah is late. I might have thought that there's so much distress for and he's not going to go and give gratitude. So therefore, it's shricha. We need all of these cases. So hold on, we have a few more minutes. Let me just stop the recording because it's the day. So